So if you want to highlight and celebrate introversion as its own thing, it's more about thoughtfulness, about deliberateness, taking some extra pauses, beats before you talk, and being sensitive to the world, which can show up as anxiety, but can often be a superpower.
I'm very excited to meet you all and talk with you about this special. It is such a heartwarming treat from start to finish. Craig, I'd like to come to you first, given that this is your family's legacy, and it's exciting to see how this franchise continues to expand with these little specials. How is it for you, seeing the direction that this franchise continues to take?
Well, it's very exciting. My dad passed in 2000. He wasn't sure whether the franchise would continue on or whether people loved Peanuts as much as they did. And now, 23 years later, we find that it's more beloved than ever, and it's been an honor for me to work with Raymond and my son and Neil to craft these specials and try to explore more in depth what each of the characters are about. And I think the fans really want to know more about each of these characters. And that's kind of what we try to do.
Scott and Raymond, what is it like getting to help expand this franchise in these new directions?
Well, for me personally, it was a dream come true. Longtime fan of Peanuts, but also as I've recently kind of become the general neurodiversity consultant for all of Apple TV children's programming, it's been so heartwarming for me to be able to help influence this plot line where you're shining a spotlight on a trait that usually sometimes is viewed as a negative, but actually being able to show the superpowers of introversion and the superpowers of, and also just in this kind of world we live in, where if you're not the loudest person in the room, or you don't speak up first, or you're not the loudest video on Instagram, you can sort of feel like you're losing out in some way. And that's not the case at all. Not only are you not only losing out, but you can actually really help influence society big time. So it was just a dream come true for me.
This was a really special one because I feel like, especially in this country, we really push that to make a change, you have to be the leader. You have to, be in the spotlight, and, you can't be a leader if nobody wants to work with you. And, so this was kind of celebrating and putting, highlighting the people who really want to do good in the world, but aren't necessarily looking for the spotlight. And I thought that was a really important message to share.
Now, as someone who personally does suffer from a form of anxiety, and even sometimes am occasionally an introvert, I'm curious, Scott and Raymond, how closely you two work together to highlight, some of the elements that we people like myself deal with in a positive light.
Well, the team, they were so incredibly open-minded. I just want to give them huge credit, for being so open to even, some criticism when it goes too much in sort of earlier drafts, kind of go too much in the direction of showing Marcy being an anxious person, because the research shows that anxiety is not the same thing as social anxiety. They're very different traits. So if you want to highlight and celebrate introversion as its own thing, it's more about thoughtfulness, about deliberateness, taking some extra pauses, beats before you talk, and being sensitive to the world, which can show up as anxiety, but can often be a superpower, can often be a wonderful thing to have such deep sensitivity to the world and to the suffering of others. So I just want to say, I give them huge credit for talking to me at all. And being just so open-minded and wanting to learn about the science of introversion.
And then Raymond, for yourself, what was it like working with Scott, to really help tackle that subject?
I think anytime you have more information, you're going to make something better, because a lot of times some of the ideas that Scott would share with us made it into the story in meaningful ways, like letting Marcy take that beat before she was going to do anything, take a breath before she made her decisions. And I think that's what you're always looking for, is how to make things more observational and more specific and more relatable.
I certainly related to a lot of her struggles, so I loved to watch it. And what was it then like trying to visualize that? Because it felt so whimsical, even as she's, borderline spiraling through her thoughts. What was it like trying to find the right visuals to help represent that?
What's really fun working with Craig on these is that, we get a lot of great input about, like, sometimes when things are scary for these kids, we don't necessarily need to make it feel scary for the people watching it. We're kind of like, we're kind of observing them in a way. And so, with this one, we thought, well, with Marcy, being somewhat soft spoken and kind of happy to stay in the background, she's also not a very, like, wildly energetic character like Snoopy or even Peppermint Patty. So we thought, okay, well, we'll be able to show that by showing what she sees. So we make you notice like leaves, flying through the sky or ripples on a pond. We also thought, well, if she's soft spoken, perhaps she has a very intricate fantasy or imagination. So we were able to kind of show what she's feeling rather than try to tell you what she's feeling, and show it in different imaginative ways. The other thing we tried to do is, because we're saying she doesn't like the spotlight, we tried to show that, working with like our production designer, Pascal Campion, and his team, we were able to show like she's comfortable in the shadows. So you'll see a lot of scenes where she's happily sitting in the shadows. And in those moments where she feels like all eyes are on her, we'll often show her in the bright sunlight.
Now that you mentioned that, I do remember a few instances of the shadows playing towards that field. So I love that. Craig, coming back to you. I mean, Raymond was just talking about your collaboration with it. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you worked with the team to, tap into this story and these themes?
Well, yeah, I mean, the onset of it's that myself, my son Brian, and Neil actually wrote this story, and then with the help of Betsy, we handed it off to her to kind of put her input into it, and then we rewrote. Most of the golf stuff came from me because I was the golfer in the family. But yeah, a lot of it just, we always go back to the comic strip and start there. And this story started from me watching the movie Hidden Figures. We wanted to do a Marcy story. I watched the movie Hidden Figures, and I saw the people behind the scenes in the Apollo program. And I thought, what better reflection of Marcy's life than that? Peppermint Patty gets all the glory. She gets all the awards and everything else. And here's Marcy in the background. And people, come to the studio all the time wanting to know more about each character. And we thought this is a perfect time to highlight Marcy, and show that you can be on the total different ends of the spectrum. You got Peppermint Patty, who's the hero, Marcy's in the background. And we decided to take that story and build upon that one because we thought that'd be more relatable to 99% of the public. It's
beautiful that you took that direction, and you even looked to Hidden Figures as inspiration. I mean, what a great movie and a great story to tell. So now we have a special with Marcy. We had Lucy last year. Are we thinking about continuing that for these other characters that audiences continue to want to know about, the other side characters?
Well, we do. I mean, at the studio, we have over 20 people at the studio, and every one of them has a character they want to do a special on. So I believe sometime next year, we have a special coming out on Franklin and telling the story of Franklin's inner city kid coming to this crazy neighborhood with a wild dog and the kid with the blanket, and how he's going to fit in with this gang of sort of misfits, I guess. And that was a really exciting story to tell for numerous reasons. Number one, it goes back to the 1960s when Harriet Glickman wrote a letter to my dad saying it's time for you to introduce a Black character to the comic strip, which had never been done before. And the feedback from that, all the racism and nasty letters he got through the years. And now we get to put that on the big screen, and Raymond came and made the story come to life. We worked with Rob Armstrong, who was the inspiration for the last name of Franklin. His name is Franklin Armstrong, based on a stand-up comic and comedian, Rob Armstrong. And Rob Armstrong came on as a co-writer. So between Rob, myself, Brian, and Neil, we've crafted the story, and Raymond brought it to life. And we're looking forward to everybody seeing that next year.
I'm very excited to learn more about it. That sounds like another wonderful expansion. I know I keep saying wonderful and expansion, but it is. That's what this franchise continues to do. And since you mentioned the big screen, I did want to ask. I was a huge fan of the Peanuts movie when it came out, and I'm curious if there are any talks or any ideas of going back to another feature length adventure for this crew.
Well, I could tell you, but I have to kill you.
I don't want that. I want to wait to see then.
Nothing's off the table. We're always exploring different ideas and different things in this Co-View series that we've done. which touched upon, the environment, the love for teachers, Mother's Day and how it interacts with the different people. All those subjects are just really fun. And as you know, the Peanuts universe is sort of endless. There's so many great characters to work with. There's so many great themes to work with that we explore everything. And I don't know that a movie is off the table. I would like to see one come back, but keep your fingers crossed. We will see.
I certainly will. It was that was a beautiful movie that took me back to when I grew up with those specials in the first place. So Raymond, I will come back to you. What would you say was one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest joys of getting to put this special together?
I would say, well, first I'd like to speak to the joys of it. The idea of being able to make these quiet, thoughtful films is so exciting to me. I love subtlety and diving into like feelings. And these characters are great. And the fact that Craig and his team work so hard to keep the integrity of these characters and the Peanuts world in general, really asking us to do that, to bring that to it. So when we started working on these specials, we looked to the strips. We worked really hard to even try to have the line quality be the same, so it feels hand drawn. Looking at the old specials and seeing the magic that made them work and trying to sort of emulate that and bring it to what we're doing here. We were working with this great composer named Jeff Morrow that has just done an amazing job sort of trying to capture the feel of like a Vince Guaraldi score. And I've learned from him, like, boy, it's like, you think, okay, jazz, but there's so many different types of jazz, so many different things you can do. And if you watch all these different Covey specials and you listen to them, they all sound very different. So everything to support character and emotion, that's number one for all the visuals, for everything. And it's been so fun working on these sort of specials where that's the key to them.
And so since Craig was just talking about the Franklin special we have coming up, I'm curious if there is any side character you in particular would really love to get the spotlight on in the future. I
think to Craig's favorite character, I would love to see one about Pigpen. What I think is amazing about him is he's this little kid that's always dirty and people are kind of giving him the stink eye about it. But he's honestly the most confident of all the characters. It's really great that like he's really this great example of confidence coming from within and not from without. So I think that that'd be a really fun character to explore someday.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, even his little role in this special was so funny and cute to see as he just rolled with everything and was having, all that confidence. Like you say, it's great. Scott, I'll come back to you for my final question. In addition to your work with Apple TV, I mean, we're seeing a lot of strives in a lot of kids programming elsewhere. I mean, even, Disney Plus's Baymax, exploring a lot of timely topics, a lot of sensitive topics. And I'm curious what that's like for you, seeing that in this, younger audience programming, taking the strides to introduce them to ideas that maybe wasn't the case back in the day.
It's so touching. It gets me emotional because it's so wonderful to see this push, not just for diversity of things that are skin deep, but also things that are beyond skin deep, like our brain wiring. All of us have such unique brain wiring, and all of us has such unique ways of and different ways of seeing the world. Different worldviews and different lived experiences. And when we really kind of expand that diversity umbrella to such a broader range, where we start to appreciate the differences of all people, and including brain wiring differences, it's just so deeply, deeply touching to me to see that celebrated and embraced.
Well, I think one of a kind Marcy is in itself one of a kind way to do so, to be punny, I guess, for a second. But gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I've like I said, I've been a fan of this franchise since I was a kid. I love what Marcy does for the franchise as well as the character, and I can't wait for people to see it. So thank you all so much, really.